John chapter 18. Sometimes, church, sometimes the easiest decision to make is to make no decision at all. Sometimes when we're faced with a decision, the easiest path forward is just not to make a decision. I'll give you a couple of examples how this plays out. Catherine and I, we like to try new restaurants, and oftentimes they will bring us at the end of our meal a dessert menu. There are always more than one thing that we want. So here's what we do. Maybe you've tried this. I order one, she orders the other, and we share. We don't have, some decisions are not mutually exclusive. They're not either or, they're both and. That's the way it is with us in the dessert menu. It's a both and kind of thing. Sometimes the easiest decision to make is not to make a decision, but to have your cake and eat it too. Quite literally. Other times, we're faced with decisions that really aren't compulsory. There are decisions that we can walk away from without making a decision. I'll give you an example. A few weeks ago, some people here at the office circulated an NCAA March Madness bracket. So I decided, since I've not watched any college basketball this year, I decided not to pick the winners and the losers. You know what? Nobody cares. There is no consequence to my choosing not to make decisions on that bracket. They were decisions I could just walk away from with no consequence. Some decisions are that way. But other decisions that we face in life, we are compelled to choose between two mutually exclusive options. When it comes to, for many people, the easiest decision to make about Christianity or about Jesus or about religion in general, for many people, the easiest decision is to make no decision at all. And that plays out in a couple of ways. Either they take all the religions and pick and choose and come up with an artificial version of their own religion because they want the best of all worlds. They want their cake and eat it too. Or many just say, I'm not going to get into that game. I'm not going to make a decision about religion, about Jesus, about Christianity. When it comes to Jesus and Christianity, we must make a decision between mutually exclusive options. When it comes to Jesus, we are compelled to choose. And we must choose to be either for him or against him. Don't take my word for this. Let's listen to the words of Jesus. Here's the way he put this. Matthew 12:30. Whoever is not with me is against me, not neutral. Whoever is not with me is against me. And whoever does not gather with me scatters. When it comes to Jesus and all that he claimed to be, we are compelled to choose between mutually exclusive options. Said differently, you are either with Jesus or you're against him. You are either for him or against him. This week points to the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. This morning, I want to examine an episode that takes place the morning of Jesus' crucifixion. It's the episode where Jesus is having a conversation with the Roman governor, a man named Pilate. Jesus is having a conversation with the man who will ultimately approve his crucifixion and send Jesus to the cross. And in that conversation, this Roman governor is faced with the same decision we are all faced with. Am I going to choose for Jesus? Or am I going to choose against him? And it's in this conversation that Jesus says some things to this man named Pilate that he also says to us. Things that should weigh heavily in our decision about Jesus. Now, just to set the context for this conversation, the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem, whose position and traditions had been threatened by this man named Jesus, realized they must dispose of him. They have to get rid of Jesus. They don't have the authority to sentence someone to death. So during the Passover, time of great celebration there in Jerusalem, when Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, will be there in Jerusalem, they see their opportunity to have the Roman governor sentence Jesus to death. And they accuse Jesus to him, not of threatening their religion. He doesn't care about that. They accuse Jesus of trying to overthrow Rome. They tell him Jesus claims to be king in his efforts to overthrow Roman rule. That's where we pick up the conversation that Jesus has with Pilate in John chapter 18, beginning in verse 33. Pilate went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked, "or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate responded. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What is it you've done?" Now watch what Jesus says to him. Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another place." See, Jesus knew what Pilate was up against. Jesus knew what Pilate knew. Pilate's position, Pilate's place of authority in the Roman Empire depended upon him maintaining order in Jerusalem. And already there had been many Jewish uprisings documented in history for which Pilate was held accountable. And Pilate knew that if he could not maintain order in a volatile place, Rome would dethrone him. They would take him out of his position of power. And here's something else Pilate knew. If he had any hope of maintaining order in Jerusalem, especially during the Passover, he needed the help of the very ones demanding Jesus be crucified. If Pilate was going to protect his own political power, he had to appease those who were demanding that he send Jesus to the cross. And Jesus says, "Look, I understand what your kingdom's all about, but my kingdom is different." Church, the New Testament teaches something very important about Jesus. A choice for Jesus is, in fact, a choice for an eternal kingdom. It is a choice for a kingdom very different from the kingdoms that we have here on earth, because his kingdom lasts forever. Worldly kingdoms are temporary. We must all choose. Are we going to choose for Jesus and choose for his eternal kingdom, or are we going to choose for this earthly kingdom? In other words, we all either have an eternal paradigm or we have a temporary paradigm. Okay, if you live for this world's kingdoms, you will invest your time, talent, and treasure in temporary things. You will invest your life in things that don't matter. There is no better example than the one before us. Look at this man named Pilate. Pilate had a position of power in probably the greatest empire the world has ever known. You know what we have left of Pilate? You know what we have left of the great Roman Empire in which he reigned? We have rubble. The remnants of the greatest empire ever on earth is nothing more now than a pile of rubble and ruins. Even the greatest earthly kingdoms the greatest nations, the greatest businesses, the greatest militaries, the greatest kingdoms on earth are temporary. John said it this way in 1 John. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father's not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the boastful pride of life, is not from the Father, but from the world. Watch this. The world is passing away, and also its lusts. But the one who does the will of God lives forever. Pilate ultimately chose what so many choose. He chose his earthly kingdom over Jesus' eternal kingdom. But the wise choice is a choice for Jesus and the kingdom that will never end. Now let's pick up the conversation in verse 37. You are a king then, said Pilate. Now watch what Jesus says. Jesus answered, you say that I'm a king. In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. What is truth? Retorted Pilate. Many today think exactly the way Pilate thought here. Truth simply can't be known. Objective truth is imaginary. It can't be real. I don't have to tell you this. Moral truths have never been so rejected and even reviled as they are today. Nothing is right because nothing is wrong. In fact, in today's cultural ethic, the only thing wrong is to suggest that some things are wrong. If you think about it, that's a circular argument, isn't it? But nothing is wrong because all moral truth is a subjective thing. Everyone is right because there's no such thing as moral wrongness. Now we know that deep down that cannot be right. The world was reminded of this just a few days ago when a troubled young lady went into a school and just started shooting people. Adults, children. And we watch that. The world watches that. And we all agree that is morally wrong. That is morally reprehensible. So this idea that moral wrong doesn't exist, doesn't hold water. We all know, deep down we all know that there are some things that are morally right and there are some things that are morally wrong. The question is not, is there right and wrong? The question is, what standard draws the line between the two? By whose rule are you going to play? The only rule that makes sense is established by one who is above culture, who is above this world system, above this fallen world system, and is perfectly just, and the only person that is Jesus. Jesus told his disciples the night before this conversation took place, I am truth. I am truth. John would later say in 1 John, we know also that the Son of God has come and has given us understanding so that we may know him who is true. And we are in him who is true by being in his Son, Jesus Christ. He is the true God and eternal life. A choice for Jesus is a choice for truth. And then finally, Let's pick up the conversation in chapter 19. Chapter 19, verse 9. Where do you come from? Pilate asked Jesus. But Jesus gave him no answer. Do you refuse to speak to me? Pilate said. Don't you realize I have the power either to free you or to crucify you? Jesus answered, you would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin. A choice for Jesus, quite literally, is a choice for his prevailing power. Jesus said, you only have power that I allow you to have. Make no mistake about it, Pilate, I am in charge here. Sometimes when we talk about Good Friday and the crucifixion of Jesus, sometimes we inadvertently misspeak. And it's not intentional. But sometimes we say things like, yeah, Pilate is the one who killed Jesus. Or the Jews killed Jesus. They took his life. And in a way, that's true. They had a part in it. But let me just say, no one took Jesus' life. Jesus gave his life. Jesus, the events of that Easter weekend unfolded precisely the way Jesus wanted them to unfold. In fact, the night before, y'all remember this? When Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane praying with his disciples, just before, the night before this conversation took place. Judas shows up with a detachment of soldiers, and they are there to arrest Jesus. And Peter takes out a knife and starts whacking away at people, cuts off a guy's ear. Y'all remember this? Okay, do you remember what Jesus said to Peter when Peter tried to defend him? I'll read it to you. Matthew 26:53. Jesus told Peter, do you think I cannot call on my Father and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? How many angels is that? The song says 10,000 angels. Jesus could have called 10,000. That's an understatement. He could have called 72,000 angels according to this verse. Jesus was saying, look, Peter, if I want to be rescued, I don't need your help. You know why Jesus was not delivered from the hand of Pilate and from the hand of the Jews? Very simply, he didn't want to be. Jesus was calling the shots. Nothing happened that was not part of his plan all along. Now, I want to close with two important observations from this truth. Folks, this is so beautiful. Two glorious truths about when we trust Jesus and his prevailing power. Number one, God has the power to use even evil for good. Look at what happened here. This has to be one of the greatest tragedies in human history when Jesus was crucified. And yet, the greatest tragedy in human history was for our greatest good. It was part of the most glorious work ever conducted here on this planet. Jesus' death did not thwart God's plan. It was part of God's plan. God can use even evil, the darkest moments, for good. Life hurts sometimes. In a crowd like this and with an audience like we have online, I know I'm speaking to many people. And you right now, this morning, you're in a valley. You're in a time of suffering. You're in a painful place of life. Let me just share with you, a choice for Jesus is a choice for someone who can give purpose to your pain. John said it this way in chapter 6. Jesus said it this way in John 16. He tells his disciples, look, I've told you all that I've told you, so that in me you may have peace. In this world, you'll have trouble, but you can take heart because I have overcome the world. I have a prevailing power that can even use your darkest moments for your greatest good. And Paul would say it this way: our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Jesus has a prevailing power that can use even life's darkest moments for your greatest good. And then second implication of this important truth is very simple. Jesus cannot lose. The power that Jesus wills is no match for any other force in this universe and beyond. Jesus has prevailing power. You know, there's so much that the Bible doesn't speak to that I wish it did. You know, I would love for there to be a chapter somewhere in here on the United States and kind of how things are going to turn out here and what's happening. I can't find it in there. World War I, World War II. There's Bible. Why don't you speak to these things? What about the next one that's coming? Okay, Bible doesn't speak to many things, but it does speak very clearly to something. It speaks very, very clearly about how this age is going to end. Let me nutshell it for you. At the end of this age, evil is going to reign here on this earth. There's going to be a world leader that is empowered by Satan himself that will rally the armies of the world against Jesus and all that is good. And I'll just read one verse from you from the book of Revelation, chapter 17, verse 14. They, speaking of this evil leader, they will wage war against the Lamb. That's Jesus. But the Lamb will triumph over them because he is the Lord of lords and King of kings. And with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. In the end, regardless of what happens between here and there, in the end, Jesus wins. Jesus wins. Now, this is so hopeful because we all live one moment from a frontier called the future. There's not a person in this room that knows what's going to happen to you and in your life in the next 5 minutes, or this evening, or this week, this month, this year, this day. Nobody knows what your future holds. We are stepping every moment of our lives into a brand new frontier that in many ways is beyond our control. I do not know what next is for you, but you can know what's last. No matter where life takes you between now and the end of this age, you can know you are on the winning side if you choose Jesus. We are all faced with a decision. Will we choose for Jesus? Or will we choose against him? Pastor Jeff, I want to choose Jesus. The wonderful news is he is willing to accept anyone and everyone who makes a choice for him. Heads are bowed, eyes are closed. If this morning you would like to say, Pastor Jeff, I want to once and for all make my decision for Jesus. So I encourage you to spend these next quiet moments in prayer with your Creator. I don't know how to pray. Just talk to God in your heart, honestly and earnestly. You might say something like, God, I recognize I've sinned and I need your forgiveness. I believe Jesus, your son, died for me and then rose from the dead. And in this quiet moment, I am placing all of my trust in what Jesus did for me to save me from my sin and to make everything right between me in you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Everyone looking this way. If that was your prayer, I would love to offer you some literature, some booklets that will help you fully understand what it means to make a decision for Jesus. That literature is available for you as you leave this morning. It's out at guest services, out in our lobby. Please stop by and receive that gift from us. We believe it would be a blessing to you. If you're watching online and you made a decision for Jesus this morning, I'd love to send you that same literature in the mail. If you'll go to the website, imadeadecision.com. imadeadecision.com. That's our church's website. You can fill out a form there to provide us with your address. If you'll be so kind to do so, I promise we'll send that same literature directly to your home. Thank you for watching this video on First Redeemer's YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it, click like below and leave us a comment. And if you'd like more content like this, click subscribe and turn on your notifications. Thanks again for watching.